I just got back from the grocery store and John is outside with the kids, and I thought it is a perfect time to sit down and do a little chatty Q&A. So on Instagram, about 2 weeks ago actually, I asked if you guys had any homeschool related Q&A questions. And I am just going to go through a bunch of them at random here. I actually haven't really looked at them. I do prefer to do Q&As that way without prepared answers. I just put all my groceries away. Sorry, I'm like super hot. It is not, November in Florida is not like November everywhere else. So I am just going to go through some of them here and chat with you guys. I'm gonna set like a 15-minute limit or so and see how far we get. So the first one here is, what is the book you use to teach character qualities to or your devotions with your kids? That is Laying Down the Rails by Simply Charlotte Mason. We love that. I actually have a review on that, and if I can find it, I will link it up here. So that is our habit study. Now, John does do devotions with the kids, usually at dinner time. So right now we cycle through a few books. I'll put them below because he cycles through, it's Indescribable, Jesus Calling for Kids, and then we have one about the names of God, and then a beautifully illustrated storybook about Jesus's life. So we actually keep them right here by our dinner table, and that's what he chooses from each night. What were your biggest fears, if any, when first deciding to homeschool? My biggest fears were probably like financially motivated, like what if I can't, like what if I have to work, or what if, you know, just things like that, like what if we can't afford everything, or yeah, I would say, well, we've been homeschooling now for 6 or 7 years, I want to say. So, and when I first started homeschooling, I had 2 kids, and so I would say that, like, you know, my kids were young, so I didn't have a lot of fear. Now, if I were to start now, like starting with a 5th grader, a 3rd grader, a kindergartner, and a toddler, I would probably have different fears, but thankfully it's just kind of been like our way of life since we've been parents, so that's been helpful. Although I will say one of my biggest fears was that John wouldn't want us to continue past preschool, because he was kind of like, those homeschool kids, huh? You know, so, but he got over that very quickly, and we've talked about that a lot on our channel. If you weren't able to homeschool, what other option would you have chosen, public or private? So we decided to homeschool when our oldest was about to start at a private Christian preschool in town. And I love that school and what that school is all about. Although, as far as like theology goes, I don't think we fully are in line with it. So I'm not sure what our options would be if we didn't homeschool, but I feel like the Lord would direct our path if that were the decision we were to make. So I'm not really concerned about that. We have a great community, a lot of options, a lot of hybrid homeschool situations as well. How long do you plan to homeschool? I really, honestly, like, I would love to homeschool as long as, you know, all the way through. A lot of kids in our town pretty much stop homeschool around 10th grade and dual enroll at the community college. That seems to be a very common thing that a lot of the parents choose to do here. We have a really great art school in town. We also have a couple of great private schools that offer classes to homeschoolers. You know, you can take this class or that class. We're an equal access state as far as sports go. And also the private school in town also allows high schoolers and I believe middle schoolers to homeschoolers to pay to play on their teams, just as the other kids would be paying as well. So there are a lot of options. I think that, you know, we're going to be in middle school next year with my oldest. We'll be crossing some new bridges here with that. I personally am changing our homeschool a little bit for her in middle school, not a ton, but we're going to be modifying some things just because I think it's a great time to start with some independent changes. But high school homeschool here it doesn't have to be like just the traditional homeschool. Not that really any age is anymore, because there are so many options for homeschoolers all over. But being homeschooled through high school doesn't look like what a lot of people think that looks like. I think, you know, there's a lot of different options. So we'll see. Because youth athletics are actually very, very important to my husband and I. We both experienced a lot of character growth and accountability through middle and high school from being on sports teams all year round. And so because of that opportunity for our kids to play sports in our local high schools and the private schools as well, I think that would be a big deciding factor in us being able to continue homeschooling. How do you stick to a routine with all the other things like housework, activities, friends? It's hard. I think that like routine is a very seasonal thing. I think you gotta let it go when it doesn't work anymore and find a new rhythm. And for us, certain routines last usually about like 2 to 3 months, and then we enter into another season in our family, or like actual season, like Christmas season is coming up, which is going to change a lot of our daily rhythm, but also not a lot of it. Does that make sense? So saying no is an important one, so you can say yes to the appropriate things or to the things that work best for your family. Those are all just things I've had to learn, and that has helped me stick to the routine that is most important. And then also just keeping that in your head, like just do the next right thing. Don't look at the whole big picture of your day or your week. Just do the next right thing. Just go to the next class your kid's supposed to be in, or go to the next, or do the next task you should be doing, and don't worry about the big picture. So that helps me as well. Tips on how to stay patient while working through lessons. Thank you in advance. A lot of that for me is just being mindful that I can only control my responses, not my kids' responses. That they are little, like, unpracticed human beings. They're not, you know, we have more opportunity to show grace and patience than they really have in them at this point. And so to model that, to also know when to give grace and when to be stern. One of the things that I have to do, and I know it's shocking, but I like to tell it, I like to say it to you guys, because I think that we think homeschooling is always like this beautiful kumbaya thing. A lot of times I'll start lessons when my kids are not at the table, and that will cause frustration in them, but it also teaches them to be where they're asked to be. And so a lot of times I'll start reading lessons because I said in 5 minutes we're going to start this lesson, and even if nobody's there, I will read the lesson out loud to an empty room. And you know, a lot of the frustration that comes is because people aren't ready or they didn't know. So it's a lot of, this is what's expected of you and this is where you're going to be, and then when we're done, this is what you may do. Kind of like just giving them an idea of what's going on, and that also helps limit the frustration. But if you mean frustration as far as like academic challenges, bringing in movement, moving to a different space, putting off a lesson to a little later in the day if it's necessary, providing a snack, maybe just some kinds of distractions that help limit that frustration level in them, and then therefore in you, because I'm a big like emotional engager. So if they're reacting, my natural tendency is to also like escalate as well. So for me, it's a lot of like talking myself down, or just considering the source of the frustration. That would have been a great one to have considered before I sat down to do this, but that's what I have when I'm just shooting off the hip. How do you handle burnout? Favorite relaxing music for school time? Favorite relaxing music is hymns. I especially love Fernando Ortega. So I love putting on any like Fernando Ortega station in my house. His voice is very soothing to me. It's one that I listened to when I was a child. So that, and then what was the other part of the question? How do you handle burnout? Have I done a video on this? I kind of have like ways to avoid burnout, and then what I do if I get to that point of burnout. So daily quiet time is important in our home for me to not be burnt out, and also for my kids to not be burnt out. Not only just giving them a daily quiet time, but also taking that time for myself. Having good expectations and not too many expectations on my day is helpful. Waking up early, number one way for me to avoid burnout. I I do love to go on a good run. I do a lot of angry running. So if I get very frustrated, I'll text John and say, I need to go for a run when you get home. There's that. A lot of times I'm just I've been a runner almost my whole life, but I'm always shocked by how much just weight it takes off my shoulders when I get a good cardio workout in. And then every now and then I will just say without guilt, like, honey, when you get home, I'm gonna leave, and then text me when they're in bed. Because, I mean, it's not like in a mean way, and I'm not telling the kids like, I'm leaving and I don't wanna see you anymore and I'm not coming home till you're in bed, but it's healthy. Like, you spend every single day with your kids, and sometimes you just can't give them your best self. And yes, there are times when you need to dig your heels in and just get through, but if you have the opportunity and it's not too taxing on your family to just take a breath for a little bit, then do that. And a lot of times I do that. I go and I grab a tea or a coffee and I walk, and I just walk around. I don't necessarily always shop because that's not something that I enjoy a lot, but just getting out, getting on the phone with my sister and driving sometimes, things like that. How long do you give not working curriculum before switching? We're in a pretty good rhythm now where we don't try out a lot of curriculum, and I am very selective with things, so I will obsessively look at stuff for probably up to a year before I'll commit to a certain curriculum. But for the most part, we're pretty much in like that Simply Charlotte Mason flow for a lot of stuff. And then we found our math and we found our history years ago. So we don't tend to run into a lot of not working curriculum. And I look back, well, for example, last year, the Good and the Beautiful Science didn't necessarily work for us. We just kind of did it off and on throughout the year, and then I just decided the next year to switch. I also am not one to start a brand new curriculum in the middle of the year. That's just not my personality. So I guess a school year, a calendar year, try it, but if it becomes too taxing on you as the parent, then that's usually where I draw the line. So whatever the timeline is for that. Tips for teaching handwriting to a reluctant 5-year-old who can read great but hates writing. I can't tell what the rest of that is. My tip, but this is only a personal tip and this is not like an educated answer, is to not be teaching handwriting to a 5-year-old. Like, that's just, my poor daughter, I forced handwriting. We tried multiple curriculum, and she just wasn't ready. Like, her motor skills weren't ready developmentally. She wasn't there yet. And I wish I would have taken it as slow as I took it with my other kids. Now, Eli wants to do handwriting, but I actually don't really guide him in his handwriting. He just has a handwriting book. He sits down and does it with the kids, but he's not learning bad habits. I'm watching him, but it's also not formal lessons. But with my son and now with my toddler, it was a lot of like sand writing or letter recognition or tracing in the air or doing letter crafts and tracing the big cutout letters with your fingers, but not a lot of like fine motor skill handwriting. I think there comes a point where you recognize that your kids are or aren't ready for that. So my daughter struggled with handwriting for a long, long time, and I actually think it was because we tried to force it too soon. And so she was doing, and now I know that it is pretty common to do some backwards writing and things like that, but she did hit a point where she was doing well, and then she flipped her writing for a while, and then she ended up flipping it back, and I think there was just kind of it was a high pressure situation. So tips for teaching handwriting to a 5-year-old would be to step back and just do more fun things, write in shaving cream, finger paint letters, things like that, but not like official handwriting. In your opinion, what is the greatest benefit to homeschooling your children? Oh man, there's a lot. There's a lot that I see every single year. There's like little victories all year long, but I will say right now, and I kind of alluded to this on Instagram recently, I'm starting to see a little bit of the fruit of my labor with homeschooling them. And it's interesting because you kind of know that it's a lifelong process, but after years, you kind of wonder like, okay, God, when am I gonna start to see some of the fruits of this? And I have started to see that in their habits. I've started to see it in their interest in certain subjects, in their ability to take on independent lessons and take initiative. I've started to see a lot of little victories and just kind of these like little glimpses of this is what you're working for. This will show up in the future. But one of the best things is their relationship with one another. I love that they have each other. My opportunity to be with them. I do love being around them. Just like the beauty in homeschool, you know, that lessons aren't just academic, that lessons include being in the kitchen together and having relationship with extended family and having flexibility to dive deep into certain topics. And my kids probably know more about our personal family history and have met more relatives just in the flexibility of that. Got to try out some older recipes from my childhood and things that we probably wouldn't have otherwise had the time to do. So that's probably the greatest benefit, if, you know, asking me today, but ask me tomorrow and it could be different. Favorite coding toys for ages 5 to 8. Botley the coding robot is great. I'm at 15 minutes, darn it. Okay, Botley the coding robot is great. I really like that. I also like the Code and Go mouse, I think it's called. Snap circuits, is that coding? I don't think that's coding. I don't know. I get confused with what's STEM or STEAM and what's coding because I'm not like a coding person. Scratch Junior, my daughter just started using that. She's 10, but I think like an 8-year-old could use it. But that's not really a toy, that's on the computer. So the Osmo has a coding kit. I'm actually gonna be doing an Osmo review in a couple of weeks during the month of December. So if you're interested in that, stick around. So, but Botley is definitely a favorite and so is the Code and Go mouse. Those were really fun toys. How do you plan your year and know you get everything in other than the 4 basic subjects? My biggest thing with planning my year is knowing that I have more than 1 calendar year. That's gotta be it. Like, you just have to know that this homeschooling journey is most often not contained to 1 calendar year. We pick up when we start a new school year where we left off, and there's no like start and finish to the majority of our curriculum without other than math and reading, like math, reading, and handwriting, I think. Our science, our history, our poetry, most of that stuff just rolls over from year to year. And so that's super helpful because we can just really sit and immerse ourselves in it, and I'm not so concerned about number of lessons. And generally those are the subjects that we finish more of, or when I'm putting our portfolio together at the end of the year, I think, wow, we did a lot. So that's it. Like, that's how I generally plan my year, is just I have an idea of where we want to go with it, and then we take, I don't just take their lead because that wouldn't lead a lot of places sometimes, but I do just kind of watch them and figure out when we move on to the next lesson. Or sometimes, like we were doing a science study once and I planned to get through all of the marine animals, and we were on sea turtles for like 6 weeks because we have sea turtle nesting in our town, and the kids were just obsessed with it. And then eventually after about 6 weeks, I noticed that they were losing interest, and so we moved on. So that's hard. You know, I would suggest, if it's at all possible, to find curriculum that isn't limited to 1 calendar year, because I think you end up learning a lot more when you're not so limited. Do you schedule in breaks for yourself? I have. I'll link you back up here to my our schedule for the year that I did during my back to school week, but I usually do schedule in breaks, but we never end up following the schedule. So now that we're year round, I just count how many breaks we're taking. I try to not let us take a break if it's been less than 3 weeks. I try to at least get 4 weeks, and then we don't usually do more than 5 weeks of school without taking a break. So that's how that goes. Record keeping, please. Again, I'll link up here to my homeschool portfolio, like 101, but that's for the state of Florida, so that's how I keep record of that. But also, now that we're doing our exam week, which I just talked about a couple of weeks ago, that is going to now be my main way to keep record of our school year. So, do you have any tips for homeschooling while pregnant with nausea and exhaustion? Yeah, just take it down to the basics. Do whatever you need to do, and just enjoy the time that you can spend with your kids when you're feeling well enough. Because I would just hate to think that anybody would be doing more than what's required of them when they could just be loving on their kids before, you know, your whole world changes when you bring a newborn in. So do what you need to do, if it's math and reading or whatever, and then use the rest of that small bit of energy you have to just play with your kids. Now, I didn't take that advice, but that would be my advice if I ever went through it again. What is your husband's involvement in things like curriculum, education style, etc.? So John will call me every now and then, and like he'll be excited about something he heard or he read or he listened to a podcast or he was talking. We have a lot of homeschooling friends. He was talking to another homeschool dad, or they want to take the boys or they want to take the girls and do X, Y, Z with them. But for the most part, John's involvement with our homeschool is being, you know, available to listen when I want to talk and giving me his opinion when I ask for it. He very much trusts me, and you know, I know some people want their husbands to be super involved. I love taking the lead in our homeschool, but I also always want to run things by him, and he almost always just agrees with whatever I say, but I do like that I know that he's listening. Like, you know when your husband's listening or when they're not paying attention, so he definitely pays attention when he knows it's a serious topic, like a change I'm wanting to make, or something that happened in our day. Now, as far as the daily stuff goes, he generally tries to help me get the kids going in the morning. He leaves early. He used to not leave till like 9:30. Now he leaves like 6:45, 7 usually. So he will always make sure the kids are up and eating breakfast, whether he or I cooked. And he'll say something to them like, I can't wait to hear what you guys did today, or mommy tells me you're doing this today, something like that, just to make them aware that there's a dual expectation. Like, I'm not the only one who wants them to homeschool. And that's something we talked about almost 2 years ago, just if he could just plant that seed in their mind every day, that even though he's not here, homeschooling is both of us, both of our desire for them. And that helps. When he has to leave earlier, or when the kids for some reason aren't up, it's a different day. When they hear their dad has an expectation of them, they usually do a lot better. So that's his involvement. It really is mostly me, but he's very, he would honestly probably do whatever I would ask him to do. And if I wanted him to make all the decisions, he would, but that's just how it works for us. Could you please share your favorite kindergarten history curriculum? Thank you. We love Story of the World, but if I just had a kindergartner, we would just do 5 in a row. I love 5 in a row. It's my favorite kindergarten curriculum altogether. Okay, I only have a couple more here. Do you plan on using Simply Charlotte Mason Language Arts all the way through high school? I do. Simply Charlotte Mason, using Language Well and Spelling Wisdom, is a learning curve for you as the parent, because it doesn't feel like you're doing much, but you just have to trust the process, and that's hard for some people. I feel like you really need to be committed to the Charlotte Mason method before you do that, because I think if you were going by traditional like grade level standards, at some points you'd be considered behind, but then at some points you'll be way ahead. So yes, I plan to use it all the way through, just because we started it and we've been using it now for 3 years almost, 2.5 years. And I just fully trust the process. Of course, that could always change, but yes, my plan when I started it, when I made the decision to start it in 3rd grade, was to use it all the way through. How do you push through exhaustion other than coffee? Coffee, I mean, how else do you, I don't know. I will say that doing some kind of like stretching, yoga, or like a lighter exercise always helps bring me some more energy, even though it seems relaxing. Stretching out my muscles always, and like, you know, or even just going for a walk helps me. I do, like I said earlier, I do love like cardio exercise, but when I'm like exhausted, not just tired, when I'm exhausted, that is not a good decision for me, because it generally will give me a little boost, but then I'll be more tired. But something like that, some kind of like stretching type of, I hesitate to say yoga because I know there's like a whole thing about yoga. So it's like a sensitive topic right now, but something like that, it as relaxing as it is, it also is very energizing for me. So, but that's just me. Or going outside. A lot of times if I'm tired, it's because I have not been outside enough. So there's that. What do you do on days or weeks when there's a lot of appointments or errands? First of all, I try to not make a lot of appointments or errands on a week that I know we're doing school. And I do try to reserve all of that for certain days on our off weeks when I know what our off weeks are going to be. Other times, like I said, it's just saying I'm gonna do the next right thing and the next best thing for my family. Sometimes, you know, we'll have days where we have an appointment at 10 a.m. or like 2 p.m., which are like really terrible times to have appointments because you're like, do I do school before? Do I do school after? Do I not? I don't know. So there's that. Sometimes it's just not gonna be what you think it's gonna look like. And as soon as you get that out of your head, like, oh, this school day is not gonna go according to plan because I have this last minute errand or this last minute appointment. Sometimes getting it in your head that like, okay, it's not gonna be what I thought it was, gives you freedom to do something in lieu of that. But for me personally, when I'm trying to like hold on to like, okay, we're gonna fit this appointment in, we're gonna still do all these things I had planned, that's actually where we end up usually not doing anything I had planned. So if I get it in my head that, okay, Abby, like these activities or these projects can be saved for another day, let's just do what we can with the time we have, we generally get more accomplished on those days. But I do try to protect our schedule and at least not make, one of the benefits of homeschooling is that you can make morning appointments and get things knocked out before kids are out of school. But a couple of years ago, I started trying to protect our schedule and keeping like a traditional school hour schedule as far as like making appointments after 2, making appointments after 3, running errands in the evening when most, you know, working parents or school families would be running errands, even though I'm like, oh, I want to take advantage of the extra time I have. As soon as I kind of told myself, like, you really don't have the extra time you think you have, things got a lot easier. So I just needed to get over that. So yeah, we make a lot of like 2:30, 4 o'clock doctor's appointments or errands, but that helps. Homeschooling with a newborn and toddler. Other two are 3rd grade and kindergarten tips. Okay, homeschooling with a newborn and a toddler. Other two are 3rd grade and kindergarten tips. Find family subjects for the older two, read aloud a lot, enjoy those years. I don't know, 5 in a row. That's my tip for everything right now because I'm like have a renewed sense of joy about 5 in a row. But yeah, a lot of reading, a lot of like not trying to get ahead of the game. I know it's important to know what's coming up. It's important to know like what your plans are for the future, but don't just be so future focused that you miss the opportunity to just enjoy the little years. But my kids are also right around that same age. Other than my 5th grader, I'm right there with you, like in that age range. So I don't know, maybe I'll have more advice for myself in the future, but this is I'm in that same stage of life right now as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Sorry I ran over. I'm sure you expected me to run over because I always do. And I will see you, come back Wednesday. I have a fun little announcement on Wednesday. So I will see you then. Bye guys.